科学のグルメがありゃ鉄作りのマンパワーを集められる。
Hello everybody, MegazardXer, and I'm back again to give y'all my 9th review over the 9th episode of Dr. Stone, Let There Be Light of Science. And if you haven't already checked out my episode 8 review of Dr. Stone, you can go ahead and click that card in the corner and check that video out, and then come back and watch this video, as that episode actually had me along with a special guest tackling that video out together. But as for this review, it's just back to normal with me soloing it out for this normal review for today. So this episode is honestly really started to push science to its limits, even more so when Senku started jumping way ahead and trying to reinvent a couple of devices that many of us take for granted nowadays. And the way that he manages to accomplish this was no easy feat. So in this review, I'll go over all the details that happened in this week's episode. So go ahead and grab a leaf blanket of yours and go ahead and snuggle up in a cozy corner on your bamboo bed and get comfortable, as we're about to go over this recent episode of Dr. Stone.
いやー、こんな可愛い子に締められるなら悪くはないけど、なんか俺を誰かとさ間違えちゃってない？長髪男なんて知らないな。俺は石化が解けてからずっと一人だけど。おはよう世界グモーニングウォー地上に変えていくオルセイ一歩ずつ西を向かっちょらこの歩みで世界を広げよう。
So for this review, I'm going to tweak things just a tad bit different, as for this episode, the plot was pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to wrap things up pretty quickly for the plot, but it's going to allow me to be able to discuss more about my thoughts about this episode as a whole. So as for the plot summary, during the group's ramen partenage, the gang are approached by Gen Asagiri, a magician from Senku's time, who he had been sent by Tsukasa to confirm Senku's death, but decides to give a false report instead. Using the successfully completed iron, Senku takes advantage of a sudden thunderstorm to turn it into a powerful magnet. Using this, the gang builds a power generator, which they manage to convince Kinaro and Jinro to operate, leading the reinvention of the light bulb. So that is a pretty short, brief, concise plot summary though, but there was just quite a bit I just want to talk about in terms of the discussion point. So in this episode, we picked up right where the previous episode ended, where Senku's group was passing out bowls of ramen to some of the villagers, and it quickly pans to the village chief and Kohaku's sister, who still had some doubts on why Kohaku is working with an outsider. But back to the outskirts of the village, right off the bat, this unidentified person was seen in the background that wasn't part of the village people. Instantly, Kohaku had a sneaking suspicion that this guy was an ally of Tsukasa. However, the guy denied it. It turns out that this guy's name is Asagiri, who happens to also be from Senku's timeline, that it was claimed to be a magician, and that was plainly evident from the moment that he had wished to have a Coke to go with those noodles, as that being something that we have within our modern times compared to the Stone Age. But now, instantly, I knew this guy had to be associated with Tsukasa. It was later shown that he was associated with him after Senku asked him while he was burnt out helping him oxidize that furnace to help with the iron creation. So we managed to get a quick update from Asagiri on Taiju and Yuzura, and it seems that all is going well for them. And that's pretty much all we heard. It wasn't like too much into the details on that though, but they're doing good and they're still somehow managing to survive with Tsukasa around. Now, Asagiri's original task that Tsukasa assigned to him was to confirm Senku is dead. However, it seems like Asagiri has his own goals in mind. Asagiri is merely a spectator, and he doesn't really care whether Tsukasa's empire or Senku's kingdom of science ends up being the one on top at the very end. Because essentially with him, he doesn't care which one comes out on top. As long as one of them does, he's going to find some benefits for both, either with the Kingdom of Science or with Tsukasa's empire. But it was thanks to Senku's advancement with technology, with science, that it persuaded him to actually start to think about this, and for him to be pretty much have a neutral kind of idea or mindset of, okay, now it really doesn't matter. I'll just please Senku right now so Tsukasa ain't bad, because Senku does have a potential good life that he can create just for me. That's what the dude was pretty much thinking. Then we lead into the second biggest part of the episode, and that is Senku trying to create electricity. Instantly, I thought back to some of my chemistry classes, and while thinking about that, I thought for one of the ways for them to create electricity was they're going to need copper, and they're also going to need some magnets. Now, to create electricity, the common way is to spin a super powerful magnets around copper. So instantly, I was thinking, how were they going to be able to pull this off? But Senku somehow had it covered. They created a solid form of copper and wrapped it around the iron bar, and with a little assistance from lightning, they were able to create a super magnet. One thing I really liked and enjoyed about this show is that every scientific thing Senku manages to do throughout the anime is pretty factual and pulling several references to previous scientists that managed to come across the discovery first. There were many times, much like the magnet creation, where I was thinking of what could happen next, and it plays out similarly to a way I imagine, and them explaining and doing it. For a quick science lesson for y'all, they essentially created an electromagnet by placing the iron in the center and wrapping the solidified copper around it. In order to create an electromagnet, you need to run a current through the copper that will change the particles in the iron, and when it's struck by the lightning, that's what causes the particles to change, and it will create a magnetic field where all of the particles are all bouncing around all over the place. That's the plain and short and sweet explanation of what they did. So essentially, in order to run a current through that through the copper wire around the iron, they needed some kind of electricity. But with electricity not created yet, the only natural occurring electricity is obviously from the lightning. So that's why there was a sense of urgency from the second that the thunderstorm popped up after they created the iron and said, hey, we need to go ahead and take advantage and seize this moment. Now that Senku has magnets as well as copper, he was finally able to create electricity, in which in our history, when it happened with Benjamin Franklin, it was a monumental moment that changed our lives for the better, and the fact that Senku was able to pull it off with their limited resources was astonishing. And with that electricity, Senku was able to reinvent the light bulb once again, which left everyone around him in a state of awe. To think that all of these newly Stone Age people were using fires to light up the night, and now they're able to access artificial light through the light bulb that Senku managed to create, it's truly something else. One thing I find and admire about this anime is that it's super unique, and to the best of my knowledge, I hadn't seen any other anime that came close to this feeling of exploration, applying science to essentially recreate many things we have access to in our modern age. I mean, sure, we may have seen it done to a smaller degree in many other animes that oftentimes involve magic, but not nearly as close to what Dr. Stone performs. And that is pretty much where the episode ends, and now that they have electricity, they are one step closer to creating the antibiotic that Kohaku's sister desperately needs. My one concern is that will Tsukasa come back into play anytime soon, because it seems like anytime Senku makes a huge scientific advancement, the massive Tarzan on steroids isn't too far right behind them, considering they shine that bright light during the middle of the night like that. But other than that one worry, I think things are looking up for Senku as well as his village friends. So that is all for my 9th review over episode 9, so I hope you really enjoyed it. If you hadn't already done so, make sure you hit that like button as well as hit that subscribe button to keep up to date on all things Dr. Stone I'm currently reviewing for this series. If you want to keep up with me on social media, you can also follow my Twitter at Megazard_X just to see what I'm up for from a day-to-day life. Man, can y'all believe it? We are just a bit over 33% done with Dr. Stone so far, and this series is really flying by. I can't believe we only got about 16 more episodes left. A third of it's already done, and that's all we have left of it. I'm pretty sure we're going to enjoy it every step of the way. So make sure to tune in next time for my review for episode 10, A Tenuous Alliance. So until whatever video I make next, see ya.
これは夜の闇を3700年ぶりに照らす科学の火だ。